Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sarah Michael Gaston. I'm the policy advocate with Youth Forward, and I'll be facilitating this training and monitoring the chat box. Uh, if you have any questions or comments for the presenter, everyone is muted at the moment, but when you'd like to speak, just unclick your microphone and we will hear you. And a recording of this training will be sent out to everyone in addition to the slides so that you can go back and look at everything. And a little bit about this training series. And then we'll get started. So the mental health and wellness training series for youth development workers is organized by Citywide Sacramento, Youth Forward, the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, and the Sacramento County Office of Education. According to the Journal for Youth Development, a youth worker is someone that works directly with a youth program to facilitate and support young people's personal, social, and educational development. And so the purpose of this training is to empower youth workers with the resources, confidence, and tools to support and facilitate youth mental health and well-being needs, in addition to helping them navigate the environments that impact their well-being. And today's training will be about befriending your inner critic, learning about the inner critic, cognitive behavioral therapy, self-talk. And so, we want you to learn how to recognize and identify the inner critic, and then how to manage it. And we have the pleasure of having mental health professional Brinn Langdale present again. Brinn is a marriage and family therapist, and she has worked mostly in a school-based therapist in elementary and junior high schools, and mostly works with adolescents and young adults and supporting them with trauma, anxiety, and depression, and the like. And so without further ado, I will pass the mic to Brinn Langdale.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah Michael. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you all can see that. If you want to go ahead and put your name, what role you play in your youth's life. And then the other question is, if your inner critic had a name, what would their name be? So this, let's not take offense if there's someone in the group that has that name, right? These are all personal, but be really curious to see what comes up for you. And this is kind of an introductory to this personification of this inner critic that we have. So if you want to take a moment to go ahead and start doing that in the chat, that would be awesome. And while we're doing that, the idea here is that we're really trying to get to know this inner critic, right? And the idea of befriending your inner critic, I think when I think of befriending somebody, I think of, understanding them, having empathy towards them, and having some compassion. So understanding, right? We're trying to understand where this inner critic comes from. And empathy is being able to kind of put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, right? And then the compassion piece comes from when we're able to do all of that, we have some more understanding, empathy, and compassion, and be able to see things from their eyes. So the reason I'm so passionate talking about this topic of inner critic is because I was first introduced to this topic like 10 years ago. And in the last 10 years, I have, every time I talk about this with anybody, whether it's friends or coworkers or clients or a presentation or whatever, anytime I've talked about this over the last 10 years, there's overwhelmingly a right? Like an understanding of the inner critic. And I have yet to meet somebody who's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, right? Like, no, that doesn't apply to me. And so this is something that it's a really universal experience that I have found. And so I really love talking about it because it's something that we can all relate to so much. And it plays a huge role in our mental health. So when we are talking so if we have a better understanding of our own self and our own mental health and our own inner critics, then we can really help the youth that we work with their mental health and their inner critics. So I'm just gonna go ahead and check the chat real fast. I love to know where people are coming from. If we were in a live setting right now, I'm such a fan of asking questions and getting to know people and having more discussions. Obviously, that's not the case right now, but I would really love to know a little bit more about you. So I just want to take a moment and kind of scroll through this a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of mentors, parents, coaches, inner critics names. I love these.
You're fantastic.
Right? It's so good. I love the creativity and coming up with these kind of on the spot. Some of it might be on the spot. Maybe you've been familiar with this idea. Maybe you have this already in your head. Wow, this is great. Okay, so a lot of mentors, advocates, yep, parents. Exactly. Okay. Sweet. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I saw Sergeant Expectations and someone's like, I'm stealing that. I'm like, I have to steal that too. That's a really good one. Or the Shitty Committee. I like that. Nice, Greg. All right. So befriending the inner critic, and a little bit just little information about myself down there, my contact information, website. This will also be showing up at the end. So if you have any questions about any of this, I'm more than happy to talk about these topics. I'm super passionate about it. Always happy to talk. I probably talk for hours about these things. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk pretty broad at first. All right. We're going to basically go over the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, this is basics, right? We were not diving into a whole course on this, really just some basic slides on this. Then we're going to talk about where does this internal self-talk come from? And really getting this broad picture of where these thoughts come from. Then after that, we're going to introduce the inner critic and get to know this part of ourselves a little bit more today. And then also from there, not just get to know this part of ourselves, but also get to know our inner nurturer as well. And the inner nurturer is maybe less of an obvious part of ourselves, a less obvious player in the roles that go on in our heads, right? So it's really important when we talk about the inner critic, to befriend it, we kind of need that nurturing aspect. So we'll talk more about that today too. And then we're going to go through the process of actually creating a positive phrase for ourselves. This is something I'm a big fan of, doing something tangible and walking away from workshops with something. And so this is part of that process. It's also a really beneficial process for working with your youth, is going through this process of creating the phrase yourself, so that way you can go out and help your youth with that too. And then at the end, we will have time for questions and answers. So we will be wrapped up here. The goal is to be wrapped up here at 11 o'clock on the dot, if not a few minutes before. All right. So let's keep going here. So raise your hand if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out. If you're hanging out with a bunch of kids, you probably have, right? I love it. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, then please do yourself a favor and watch Inside Out. Even if you have a kid or not, doesn't matter. Watch it. It's so good. It explains the different parts of ourselves and internal psychology so well, and really does an awesome job. Really does an awesome job of explaining and personifying these different parts. I'm a huge fan of personifying. That's why I had you name your inner critic there, was because if we can kind of extrapolate it from ourselves, if we can remove it from ourselves, it's less burdensome, right? We're able to kind of give some space to what those thoughts are, what those emotions are, what those feelings are. And if we can name it, we can tame it, right? So this idea of if we can actually pick apart these different voices in our heads, then we have a lot better chance of being able to deal with them as they do come up. All right. So I will be referring to these different parts as we go throughout the training today. All right. So the different parts might show up with this example of getting out of bed in the morning, right? So maybe there's a part of you that's like, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get out of bed. Maybe there's another part that says, I want to snooze my alarm a little bit longer. Or maybe there's another part that's saying, it's okay if I'm a little bit late, no big deal. Or I'm gross, I really need to shower. Or I just want to throw the covers over my head. Or maybe there's another part that's like, I just want to cuddle in bed, you know? Maybe with a cat or a dog or a partner or whatever it is, you know? And then maybe there's a part that's like, I'm excited to get going for the day. So this is an example of how in a split second, all these different parts can start talking. And it might sound like, you know, we have all these different voices in our heads, all having an inner competition with each other. And it's kind of like whichever one screams the loudest is usually the one that gets the attention, right? And so sometimes that might be the critic, sometimes that may be another part of ourselves. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then every single one of these points that is being made has a different emotion that comes with it, right? So if we think about these different phrases, we can start to think about what are those emotions that go along with these different phrases. So this is when we're diving into the cognitive behavioral therapy part of things, CBT. CBT is all about our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions based on those thoughts and feelings. So for example, you have a thought, okay? That thought then produces a feeling. And then that feeling gets you to actually do something. The action, the behavior, that leads to another thought, and the cycle repeats, okay? So for example, let's use a common phrase, maybe pretty apt to my experience today. I'm giving a presentation this morning. How does that phrase, just that thought, what feelings does that produce in you? So maybe for some people, it produces dread, right? Isn't like public speaking supposed to be like the number one fear of people, like even over death, right? So some people, this dreaded feeling, maybe it produces some anxiety. Maybe it produces excitement. Maybe it produces both excitement and anxiety. And so this thought is producing a feeling, and then that's going to lead to some actions. If you're feeling dreadful about something, you're probably going to act a little different than if you're feeling excited about something. And if you're feeling anxious about something, you're probably going to feel a little different than, you know, if you're super confident about something. So just getting an idea here around how can we parse out these different thoughts, feelings that lead to these actions. And it doesn't always have to go one way. Sometimes we get a gut feeling and that produces a thought. You know, I hear this a lot when people, with people who deal with panic attacks. I don't know if anyone here has ever had a panic attack or dealt with somebody who has, but sometimes feelings in their body produce a thought of, oh no, I'm about to have a panic attack, right? So this feeling in the body can produce that thought. And then you probably, once you have that thought, have some action related to that thought and to that feeling. Okay. So the basics of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is if you change your thoughts, plus change your feelings, change your actions, change your life. Right? So yes, sounds super simple. I know, just do this, right? Just do that, you'll be good. So right? A little bit easier said than done in a lot of ways. But really, we're going to be talking about today what goes into those thoughts. Why do these thoughts exist in the first place, whether they're negative or positive, right? And how do those impact those feelings? And then how do those impact our actions? So again, this is a simple idea. And when there's work done on this and there's actual time spent to parse through the thoughts and identify what the feelings are, it can be really surprising at what the action, what the outcome of those things are at the end. All right, so what goes in? Where do these thoughts come from in the first place? Like I said, we're going pretty macro today, and then we will funnel it down. So really, where do these thoughts come from? Well, really, they come, a lot of it, evolution, right? We're going big scale here. Then biology, and then our environment. And that equals the do's and don'ts of how we should be in the world, and the thoughts that we have around how we show up in the world. And this affects if it affects our thoughts, then it affects our actions. So all of these three things, the evolution, the biology, our environment, all make up how we think about how we're going to show up in the world. So we're going to dive into a little bit of what I mean by evolution, what I mean by biology, and what I mean by our environment. So first off, evolution. Okay, so way back in the day, right? Humans are evolving, the brain is developing, our nervous system is developing, having these experiences. So there's a lot of scary things, right? Things really come down to life or death. And so our brain starts becoming wired for survival. That's really what it's about at that very fundamental level, is our brain is wired for survival. So if you have a saber-toothed tiger chasing after you, right, you're gonna have to go based on your base instincts. So if there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing after you, you're either going to run, you're either gonna fight, or you're gonna flight, right? So you're either gonna run away, or you're gonna sit there and you're gonna fight that saber-toothed tiger. And the ones who ran away or fought it off, that is the DNA that was passed down, because that was survival, right? They're the ones that survived. The humans back in the day that were sitting there taking the moment to think, is that the same saber-toothed tiger we saw last week? They got eaten. So we didn't get their DNA. And so our brains became evolutionarily wired for danger, because our DNA was able to say, okay, that's dangerous, I gotta stay away from that. That plant is poisonous, I gotta stay away from that. Those are really sharp teeth, I'm staying away from that. The DNA wasn't passed along that said, I'm gonna sit here and look at this beautiful rainbow. Watch the beautiful sunset over there, right? Our brains aren't designed for that. If we're over there watching a sunset, then there's a good chance we could not be paying attention and get eaten. So on a very basic human level, our brains and our nervous system are constantly scouting for dangerous situations. So then we fast forward to modern day, we still have that animalistic, reptilian brain part of it back here at the brainstem. That part is still running. So now we're living in modern society. We don't have things that are going to eat us all the time. We don't have poisonous plants around us that we're going to eat. There are some life or death situations, right, that are very real. And the risk is not as high as it once was. But our body doesn't know that. So we're still wired. So we're still wired to scout for danger. We're still wired to constantly have this hypervigilance of what's going to go wrong. How can I prepare? What's going to come next? And that plays a big role in our thoughts and ultimately the creation of the inner critic. So that's evolution. Biology. right? Biology kind of goes along with evolution, but basically what this means is we got mom's genetics, mental health, physical health, trauma history. Then we have dad's genetics, mental health, physical health, trauma history. We also have ancestors' genetic, mental health, trauma history. And all of these go into making up a person. Now you might be like, why did I separate parents and ancestors? Well, there's really good reason for that, and it's called epigenetics. So epigenetics was first kind of discovered in like the 1940s, and then kind of got a revival in the 1990s, and has been a big topic lately. So the phenomenon of epigenetics, the study is how your behaviors in your environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. So that means that yes, we have ancestral trauma, mental health, things like that impacting our DNA, but we also have just the last generations, because what happened with mom and dad, the trauma that they experienced changed the way that their genes operated. And if it changed the way their genes operated, then that is getting passed down. So if there's generational trauma, not only is that being passed down because of the environment that you were raised in, but it's also being passed down genetically. Now, unlike actually genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. So what that means is genes can get turned on or they can get turned off for certain predispositions. So by your experiences, if you experience some major traumas, then your genes might be flipped on for certain predispositions. And then that is something that you can pass down to younger generations. Now, it says it's reversible. So that's the cool part, is that by understanding your traumas, understanding your mental health, working through these things, healing from these experiences can change the way your genes show up, and then can change the way that those genes get passed down. So cycle breakers, right? Thinking about the cycle breakers in families, the ones who are, stopping the abuse, or the ones that are stopping the addiction, the ones that are, getting out of certain areas, whatever it is, they are literally changing and reversing the genetic light switches that are happening in their DNA. And they're able to pass that down to their generations for the positive. So I love this concept of epigenetics, especially as being a cycle breaker in my own family. So I think this concept is really cool, and I just wanted to throw that out there. So this is the biology side of things. Then we go to our environment. An environment plays a huge role on our thoughts and plays a huge role in how we feel we should show up or not show up in the world. So on a macro scale, we're looking at cultural norms, right? So many different cultural norms. And especially in our culture, if we're going to talk about the inner critic, we live in a society where our inner critic, or critic in general, is a very big concept, right? This pushing, this striving, this achieving, this all the commercials that tell us that we're not pretty enough, that we're not good enough, that we're not strong enough, the messages we get of like, just do it, or be all that you can be, right? This always needing to strive and be better and do. This is a very big cultural norm, and just Western society in general. And so this is something that really shapes our thought processes. And then we can go right to cultural oppression. When we talk about the cultural norms, especially in Western culture, is to be oppressing of somebody, of some other, right? So this is ancestral. This is Western society kind of, everything from taking over other cultures to modern day oppression of not letting people in our borders, all sorts of things, to a wide variety of cultures being oppressed in this society and in other societies as well. So that has an impact on our thoughts and our processes, both from the oppressing side and from the people who are being oppressed. And then systematic racism has played into that as a cultural norm, right? Thinking about the people who experience this or the people who are enforcing this, both have these thought processes that are being shifted and changed by the environment that people are in. And we have macroaggressions, right? We have aggressions based on these things. Whether any sort of aggression towards another group of people is going to change your thought process about that other group of people. And if you're the one being aggressed towards, then that's going to change your own thought process of your own self too. Then we have microaggressions, right? These happen on both big scales and small scales too. Then we have gender norms, right? So we have gender norms coming into the picture, and then we have that is playing a role in how we form how we should show up in the world and what we should and shouldn't do. Then we have household norms, right? Now we're getting on a little smaller of a scale. And those household norms might include religion or spirituality or your views around parents' views around mental health or seeking help. Then we have, sports team culture, right? We're getting a lot put into our thought processes around how we should show up, how different cultures show up when it comes to different sports, things like that. Then we have school norms, expectations, right? All of these things impact how we view ourselves and the thoughts that are going on in our heads. So all of these really create the do's and the don'ts of our life. And then we have work culture, right? So work culture for us adults, anyone who's working, is a very achievement based. Sometimes it's push, push, push. Sometimes it's when you take a vacation, take your laptop with you, be working while you're on vacation, right? Feeling like we can't ever take a break. We have to respond to these emails right away, right? These all shape the thoughts and how we feel about ourselves. And if we're not doing that, then we tend to beat ourselves up over that. So all of these encompasses the do's and the don'ts that we have gotten. Now, of course, when we talk about this, all of these messages shift and change depending on the color of your skin, right? So all of those messages might be very different for somebody who has a skin shade that's something like this, right? Their genetics from their cultural background, their heritage, their ancestors might look different. Their parents' experiences, the trauma that they experience is going to look different than, say, this person's. Maybe somebody with this shade of skin has a different cultural background that has different messages that come in. Maybe they are being seen in this society, if they're living here in the United States, in California, in Sacramento, maybe they are seen differently, and maybe they get different aggressions towards them that shape the thoughts that happen in their own heads. Maybe that might be different for this person with this shade of skin, and the ancestors and the countries that maybe they came from. Maybe these people are escaping genocide, or they're refugees. Especially here in Sacramento, we are a huge hotspot for refugees. And so there's a lot of things happening in other countries that then come over to here, and we have these cultural norms that are maybe okay for us who have been living here for a long time, and that are totally different. So that also shapes these thoughts in our heads. And that experience might be very different than somebody with this shade of skin. And so it's all very different. All of those environmental aspects, all of those biological aspects might are going to show up differently because of where we're coming from and because of the experiences that we all have. So, like I said in the beginning, when it comes to befriending the inner critic, we really want to go with understanding. So right now we're starting to really understand that there are so many factors that go into play when we're talking about our internal dialogue. Okay, so many things start going into play here. And then we can start maybe having some empathy and compassion when we figure out what all is going on, and kind of having a better idea of why that critic exists in the first place, right? So now we're going to get to it, okay? We're going to get to kind of talking a little bit more about this inner critic specifically, okay? And so this inner critic is the one that monitors the do's and the don'ts rule book, right? So this is the one that's keeping track of if you're meeting those societal norms, those cultural norms, those household norms, those gender norms, right? This is the one that's going to be monitoring if this is actually, if you're doing it right, exactly. And it's very much judgmental, okay? It's going to be in charge of the shoulds and the musts. It's telling you what you should look like, what you shouldn't do, what you should talk like, what you shouldn't act like, right? Telling you what you must be doing and what you must not be doing. So it's very judgmental. And judgmental often gets a bad rap, but judgmental can also be a positive thing. We can be judgmental about the positive things that are happening. Anytime we're measuring something, any sort of measurement is a judgment. And so the critic is also in charge of saying, all right, you did a pretty good job at that. You know, sometimes the critic isn't always just beating us up, but it's kind of like the flip side of the coin. The flip side of the coin is the fact that this inner critic is still the one measuring that level of success, okay? And it really holds the expectations of ourself and of other people. So kind of based on that environmental, biological, evolutionary input that we have into us, the inner critic holds the expectations of ourselves and of other people. So I always know when, if I start, being really judgmental or having expectations about other people, that's my big red flag that my inner critic is probably being pretty loud about myself too. Okay, so that's like one way I can tell. It's like, all right, my critic's getting pretty loud right now because I can tell I'm being judgmental of other people. So this part is really, when it comes down to it, is really watching out for danger, and it's protecting us, okay? So I show this presentation sometimes, or parts of it, to a lot of young people, and I don't know if they quite know who this character is, but like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? And so I was thinking, I really use this because, she's sitting there, she's wagging her finger, she sends Fresh Prince off to, Bel-Air, but really what she's doing is she's protecting him, because he got into a fight and he was living in an area that she was like, nope, you're gone, you're going to go live with auntie and uncle in Bel-Air, right? So it looks critical because she's wagging that finger at him, but really she's trying to protect him, okay? So we're going to talk about a little bit about the critic being the protector, right? We don't usually associate this critical part of ourselves that's beating us up all the time as the protector. But we're going to go ahead and think about this for a minute. So I want you to imagine that you are with a little kid, okay? Maybe it's your own little kid, maybe it's a niece and nephew, maybe it's somebody that you mentor. Maybe you're with this little kid and you're out in the street. And all of a sudden, a car comes and your kid runs out in the middle of the street. You might respond by saying, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Get out of the middle of the street. Don't ever go into the middle of the street ever again. That sounds pretty critical, right? That kid thinks that they just got in trouble and that you're mad at them. But really, what's going on there? What feeling are you actually feeling? What is actually going on there?
And they're afraid.
Exactly.
They're scared, and they want to
They're
protect.
afraid. They're afraid that something bad's going to happen, and they're trying to protect you. So what they're really doing is saying, watch out for danger, right? Get out of the street, watch out for danger. Now, for some of us, if we were that kid and our parent was the one yelling at us, it might have sounded pretty harsh. It might have sounded something like, "You idiot, how dumb do you think you can be walking out in the middle of the street? Don't you ever go out in the middle of the street ever again." Right? Maybe that's like a reality. And so that kid is thinking, I'm never going out in that middle of the street again. I am never going to cross the street. I am never going to cross the street. Even if no cars are coming, I am not going to cross that street. So that's what happens with our protector, is it can get so harsh, so critical, that it actually keeps us from doing the things we want to do. So what if the love of your life was across the street, right? What if that dream job was across the street? What if moving to that new state or country that you've always wanted to do is across the street? But you can't cross the street because you're so scared of that critic telling you that you're an idiot and that you should never cross the street. So that's really how a lot of these things come out, right? Is because of the messages that we received, and all of the other things as well. But a lot of this is based on the messages that we received. There's a quote that I really love by Peggy O'Mara, and she says, our voice becomes our children's inner self-talk. And that is exactly true. So when we can become aware of our own self-talk, it can help us become aware of our talk to other people, especially those that we influence. All right, so now I'm curious a little bit about what your inner critic says. So in a moment, we are going to go out into some breakout rooms. Sarah's going to be amazing and put us into some breakout rooms in a moment. And this is a chance for you to share a little bit about your own inner critic. Now, we are going to use this time and space, right? This isn't a therapy session. We're not going to drudge up our deepest, darkest things here. We're really just going to keep it simple. But I'm sure maybe there's a part of you that can become aware of some of these things the inner critic says. And so to prepare for that, I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to take us through a little exercise. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and just take a deep breath and kind of center in and connect with that part. Connect with the part that is pushing you. It's maybe beating up on you. And think of some phrases that maybe it says. And when we think of phrases, maybe take a moment and write those down. If you're wanting, just become aware of what's going on there and how that feels. And then I want you to, still connecting with this part, ask the question to the critic, right? We're personifying. Ask the question to the critic, why do you push me so hard? What do you want? What's the end goal? What is the end goal for the critic? If the critic gets exactly what the critic wants, what would that look like? So, with those things in mind, those are the two questions that you'll be discussing in the breakout sessions is what are some of the things your critic says? And what does the critic really want? What's the very end goal? Very end goal here. And when you're in your sessions, elect one person to kind of be you don't have to record everything, but be the reporter back to us. And we'll kind of share out in a bigger group. And amongst your group, just see if there are some similar themes around what the critic says, and then see if there's a theme around the ultimate goal of the inner critic. All right. And then when we come back together, we'll have the people who have been elected, whatever you want to call it, the recorders come back to the group and share with us about what you found. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right, Sarah and Michael, are we good to go with breakout rooms?
Yes, we are.
So we'll have about like 6 or 7 minutes for this, have a chance for people to kind of share and then see if there's some common themes going on.
Brad, so that'll be about like 10:20, 10:21. I will put you all into rooms. How many people do you want in the rooms, Brinn?
Maybe like 6 or 7.
Okay. Just have to figure out how many to create. Okay, you should be going in now. There's about 10 rooms because there's about 60 people.
Awesome.
Minus you. I don't think I can join a breakout room.
I was put into one, but I declined it.
Yes.
I'll be right back.
I guess there's total. Most people have gone to theirs. And I'm not sure if the people that are still on this main screen wanted to answer these questions here. If you want to answer the questions here, if you could like maybe put that in the chat box or give me a thumbs up, and we can fill this opportunity that could be silenced with some discussion. I'm not seeing any responses. This is such a juicy topic. I feel like not everybody will be able to answer the questions or everybody to discuss. It's such an interesting topic. Okay, Brinn, everyone should be back now.
All right. So cool. All right. So hope you're all able to share and kind of discuss a little bit. I'd love to hear. I don't know if people know what groups they're in, but if there's somebody who wants to go first, maybe group 1, if you know what group you're in. I want to share back about what you guys talked about. If you don't know what group you're in, then maybe somebody else can, maybe someone can just jump in there.
I can jump in. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you want group 1 to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm group 2.
I don't think it matters too much.
No,
Okay,
you can go ahead.
I was in group 2. I had Mrs. Crawford, Mr. Duncan, and Mrs. Darling. And a little bit of our like commonalities is that we are striving to be our best selves at the end. So everybody has a common theme of their inner critique, telling them to keep, doing more than what they're doing now. Like always strive to do better than this, or this is not, your stopping point. And yes, really, it's the end goals are just being your best self and making an impact and just trying to protect and, be loved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is the idea of just doing good, making an impact, making a difference, being loved, having love, connection, right? All of these positive, these really positive things. All right. Who's next?
Who's next? Oh, I love that dance.
I think we were group 1, Kamaya, if you want to speak for us.
Okay,
I think we were group 1.
Okay, so in group 1, we kind of talked about like our inner critics being kind of like protective and like about safety or being wary of like bad habits, and the end goal is to just not to think negatively about self, to surround self with like-minded and same goal-oriented people, also to like keep you on your toes, or just make sure that you're, for myself, like elevating constantly and not being stuck in that same cycle. So that's kind of like what we kind of all took on, but we were all pretty similar.
Right. Again, yeah, love it. The same similar theme, it sounds like. All right, Kathy, I know you raised your hand if you want to go.
Yeah, it seems like there's a common theme here of perfectionism. And in my group, I had Adija and Kim and Lene, and unfortunately a gentleman by phone that we weren't able to really connect with. But yeah, I think we all kind of feel like we want to be our best selves. We kind of beat ourselves up if we feel that we didn't do the exact right thing that we were supposed to do, if we're perceived that we're not doing good enough. And, end goal being we want to be liked, we want to be our best selves, we want to push ourselves to do better.
Right, exactly. Yeah, love it. Thank you. Someone else want to go?
I'll be speaking for group number 4.
Yeah.
So it seems like a lot of us kind of like let anxiety kind of really, for lack of a better word, like police ourselves, kind of like always second guessing and doubting ourselves, even though like we know what we're doing is like ultimately really important. And so like the end goal is to, I think one of my group members, Shelby, she said like, like to kind of like walk into your power, to like be in your power, because ultimately we all like really believe that the work that we're doing is impactful, especially working with youth.
Absolutely. I love it. Kind of noticing that nurturing piece coming in and being like, be in your power and, feel that, as opposed to letting the other parts kind of dictate. Yeah. All right. Someone else want to go? I think we have 2 more groups.
I'm sorry, I don't know what group I'm in, but I can speak for my group. We pretty much had a common thing where we all are people pleasers, and we're always trying to make sure everybody else is okay. And we forget that, we can only do so much, and it's never going to be where we wake up the next day and everything is fixed. It's always going to be something. So just bracing ourselves for that and just making sure we take care of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
We still need someone from group 10, which was Jessica, Leslie, Mark, Teresa, and then an unidentifiable number. Anybody from that group want to share?
My group hasn't gone.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I can speak for group 7.
That's why. Sorry. We only have 2 more groups, but it was because I was thinking 6 groups, not 10. Okay,
so in group 7, it was really interesting. We talked about when the inner critic shows up. So for some of us, it was before we do anything, that paralyzing fear and anxiety of what's going to happen and not taking any risks because of it. Then for some of us, it's beating yourself up after the fact. You should have done better. You should have prepared more. You're so unintelligent. Why didn't you think of that? And then for some of us, it's both. So shutting yourself down before you do anything and then beating yourself up afterward for not taking the risk. So it was really interesting to notice when that was happening. And then we also started talking at the very end about where the inner critic was coming from and family culture and parents. At the very end, some of my group members were talking about, maybe their parents weren't born in the US, or maybe they were really critical. And so the inner critic is maybe not wanting to be the center of attention, or wanting to be a perfectionist, or wanting to be a people pleaser. And I just really wanted to honor the cultural basis for some of the inner critic and where those are coming from.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for talking about that, right? And all those different messages can have so many different flavors depending on what type of a household you're coming from, what kind of country you're coming from, and so many other factors in between. Thank you. All right.
I can go for number 8 unless somebody else wanted to. I don't even see their faces on here.
Go for it.
So for number 8, there were a couple of parents, and I was a parent myself. I'm a parent myself. And so a couple of us talked about like having some type of guilt and being single parents and raising our children alone as a single parent, and maybe not giving them that so-called perfect life that we dream of. There was a woman in there who's actually a marriage family therapist who dealt with the imposter type of syndrome when she's actually working with these families, questioning herself. Is she good enough? Am I good enough? Like, why am I here? I have my own things going on. Am I good enough to even help these people? And she basically wanted, like, the outcome was she wanted to be safe. A young man also, we kind of all just kind of questioned ourselves. Like this young man, he kind of wanted to know, like he had questions like maybe why am I going through some of the things I'm going through? And then the way that I kind of summed it up, and we summed it up, is like, yeah, what test? Like, what is this test for? What's the outcome? What am I supposed to learn? What's the lesson? So a lot of us at the end, the question is, am I good enough? We want to be safe and free from feelings of inadequacies. That's kind of like the inner critic, and a lot of us. I can't think of the others, but there was one young man who didn't get to speak. If he wanted to say, Eric Herrera, he was just about to say something, but other than that, he kind of agreed with us.
Thank you for that, Shireen.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else want to share from their group?
I think we were group 3. Best guess. I need more coffee, so I can't remember exact phrasing, but if I were to summarize, I think what the inner critic's goal was for our group, kind of like a paralytic, to really like truly impede all of the work that we're all trying to do. And with whatever different messages, it was to truly interfere despite our best efforts. So that was kind of my takeaway. I don't know if anybody else felt similarly.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Do we miss any groups? All right, thank you. So yeah, it really sounds like there's some really similar themes here, right? No matter what kind of background you're coming from, no matter what your past experiences is, cultures, things like that, like we all come from all these different walks of life, and we're all having really similar experiences. Seeing a lot of, hearing a lot of the not good enough, kind of beating self up, and this fear. But really, the ultimate goal is to be a good person, right? To make an impact, to work with, make an impact through working with youth or whatever the impact is that you want to make, and really doing good in the world. And how amazing is that? That's so incredible that, out of 60 people on a call, we all have this common experience of really wanting to do well. And this part does beat us up. And how cool is it that it's doing so for a reason, right? It's not just this part of you that wants to like beat the shit out of you for no reason, right? There's a reason that this is happening. And so whether it's to protect you or to make sure that you're living your best life, I mean, that's kind of where this understanding, right, and kind of some empathy for the inner critic comes in. Because if we can understand that really this part wants what's best for us and really wants what's best for other people too, then it can maybe shine some light onto why we feel like we're pushing so hard, right? And so what we're going to talk about next is this inner nurturing piece. Because the inner critic, as much as we like to think it's not the only voice, right? It's not the only voice in the head. Sometimes it might feel like that, but the reality is that there does exist this other voice. And I think that this is a huge part of learning how to manage the inner critic and how to turn down the inner critic, is learning about the inner nurturer and turning up the inner nurturer, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. And we're going to talk a little bit about, the inner nurturer. So this is the part of unconditional acceptance, right? And we live in a culture and society or whatever where the inner nurturer is usually the outward nurturer, right? Where usually the nurturer is very nurturing to other people, is very accepting of other people, is very, compassionate of other people. But how much of that are we actually giving to ourselves? Just on that flip side, how much of what the inner critic says to you would you actually say to your friend? Probably not very much. So that's where this piece comes in around how can we treat ourselves like we're treating other people? And sometimes we give people so much acceptance, so much room, but we don't give that same stuff to ourselves. So the nurturers also holds hope, optimism, and love. Again, when we think about working with youth, we try to hold that optimism, that hope, that love for the youth that we work with. But are we giving that to ourselves? And another part is this is part of self-soothing. One of the best tools I've ever learned in my whole life was how to soothe myself. I spent first 20 plus years of my life thinking that I needed other people to soothe me. I needed that to come from an external source. And as soon as I figured out that I could be my own source of soothing, it completely changed my life and my mental health and my relationships with other people, right? I wasn't super clingy or needing them or, desperate if they weren't around, because I was able to soothe myself when I needed it the most. So same thing with this. How many times are you the one soothing somebody else? How many times are you the one comforting somebody else? But are you soothing yourself, and are you comforting your own self? So recognition of self and others, okay? Again, I'm sure we can think of we can be so proud of our best friend. We can be so proud of our children. We can be so proud of our partners. And how proud of ourselves do we allow ourselves to really be? So again, this nurturing going outward, and how can we turn that and make it go inward? And it often shows up for others, right? I've kind of been hitting this point home. It's really showing up for others and not really showing up for ourselves. So I'm curious, what does your nurturer say? For the sake of time, I'm just going to ask that we maybe write this in the chat. So again, kind of connecting with this part of ourselves. Connecting with this part of ourselves that can talk to ourselves like a best friend, that can talk to ourselves like in your mind's eye, maybe think of the most loving, compassionate person you know. Maybe they're wise, maybe they're just they just give off that vibe, right? So channel them into your mind. What would they be saying to you? And I'm gonna read some of these as we go because I love reading them. They make me so happy and inspired. Hey, don't talk about my friend Julia that way, said Julia, right? Self-affirmation, I tell myself I'm powerful. Yes, love it, in line. You are enough, right? Absolutely. I know I tell myself often, it's gonna be okay, right? Just like a basic, it's gonna be okay. It's okay not to be okay. Yes, I am worthy, I am strong. You're doing the best you can, one step at a time. I am capable of doing the things I imagine. Monica, I love that one, and you'll see why in a moment. Tell myself, you got this. I keep affirmations on deck. Yes, positive affirmations do work, and they're amazing. And we're gonna create one together. Nurture says it's okay to just be you for you. Everything you do is for you. Yes, and your inner work will have a ripple effect on everyone else. I love that. You can't do everything when you're doing everything. You are better than you think you are. If I dream it, I can achieve it. You're a gem, you're kind, you're compassionate, intelligent, you're the best. Yes, oh my gosh, I love reading this. We should just have a workshop where we just do this and we'll all just like have these positive affirmations for each other because I think this is amazing right here. When I do this with youth, it just fills me up so much because to hear what they say to each other or about themselves, it's the best medicine right there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we are going to talk a little bit about how to turn up the volume on the nurturer and how to turn down the volume on the critic. Because when the nurturer is turned up, it automatically turns down the volume of the critic, okay? We can't have both going. So when one turns up, the other one turns down, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a nurturing phrase together. And this is something that you can take as an activity. You can have it for yourself and really think of what you would say to your best friend or child if they were upset or scared, okay? Because that's often what happens is that people get scared. And so if we can find a way to soothe them, it can be helpful. Same with our own selves. When we get scared, we often get mad at ourselves. So how can we soothe ourselves when we're feeling scared, just like we would soothe a child? And then come up with 2 or 3 qualities that you want to move towards. Maybe it's balance, maybe it's joy, maybe it's connection with others, maybe it's connection with self. Whatever it is, what do you want to move towards? What do you want to cultivate more of in your life? And then we're going to use the phrase, I am capable of. The reason I use this starter is because capable means that you're able to do something. It doesn't mean that you do it all the time. It doesn't mean you're perfect at it. It doesn't mean, any of that. It just means that you're able to do something. And it can be a nice reminder. So once you have, maybe you can make a couple of these, maybe you can make one, maybe you can make a few, and then remind yourself about them. Remind yourself what you're capable of. put it up on your wall, put it on your phone, set a reminder on your phone to remind yourself that you are capable. And when you're finished writing, I would love to see them written in the chat. So practicing the nurturing phrase on a regular basis helps build the muscle of the nurturing part. It was pretty clear from our earlier conversation that the critic has done a lot of weightlifting over the lifetime, right? It's pretty strong. But I'm imagining that the nurturer is not as strong for self. So imagine that it's like going to the gym. Creating a nurturing phrase, saying a nurturing phrase is like going to the gym for your nurturer. And the stronger the nurturer gets, the more easily they will be able to come to your aid when the critic is having a field day with you. All right, so I think some of the capable phrases are coming in on the chat. So I am capable of being confident. Absolutely. That is so important to remember. I am capable of loving myself. I'm capable of reaching my goals. I am divinely protected. I am capable of efficiency. I'm capable of being happy. I'm capable of success. I'm capable of doing anything I set my mind to. I'm capable of joy. Capable of doing difficult things, right? We can do hard things, says Glennon Doyle. I am capable of change. I'm capable of speaking my truth. I'm capable of being me. I'm capable of breathing and slowing down. I'm capable of making change. Yes. Oh, I love these. They just give me the chills and I'm like so inspired. I'm capable of reaching my goals. And if there's ones on here where you're like, hey, I want that too, go ahead, snatch it, right? It's all right to steal these guys. Capable of expressing my feelings. I'm capable of showing up as my best self every day. Yeah, absolutely. These are amazing reminders. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So helping youth deal with the critic, and this is also helping ourselves, but we're specializing in youth right now. So talk about and personify the inner critic. Ask them what their critic looks like. Ask them what their name is. Talk about this part of self. Talk about your own critic. Talk about their own name. Talk about what the critic says to you. That can make a huge difference, especially with the young people that we're working with. Recognize when the critic is strong and say, thank you, protector, right? This is a nice little reframe on that. Oh, geez, stop beating me up. Just stop it. You're such a jerk. Thank you. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you, protector. Maybe even reframing the critic name to a protector name. Then create and use positive phrase regularly. Again, we are building muscle with the nurturer. The critic already has enough muscle. We don't need to build the muscle of the critic. So create and use a positive phrase regularly. And this is something you can do with youth. You can also have me come in and have my little presentation for youth. It's a little different when I talk to them, but I still love it. So practice gratitude. This is a really important one because when we're practicing gratitude, when we're grateful for things, the critic is not present. So this is another way to strengthen the muscle of the nurturer, is by practicing gratitude. Self-care, right? When our critic is going crazy, I often will ask, when my critic's going crazy, I often ask myself, what do I need right now? What do I need? And oftentimes, contrary to the critic, I probably need to slow down. I probably need to take some time for myself and maybe not do it with Netflix or anything like that, but really do some solid self-care. You know, maybe it's taking myself outside, going for a walk, you know, just getting out and doing something that's really helping my mind, body, and spirit. And then the last one, I really encourage this of everybody, is talk to somebody. And the reason I put journal after that is when I don't have someone to talk to, I journal. So getting it out, getting those thoughts and negative ideas out on paper or out of your mouth. Once it's externalized, it's like it lets the pressure off of it. It's kind of like we're all a bunch of pressure cookers. When we keep all of that negativity on the inside, it builds up a lot of pressure. So if we can get rid of that pressure by talking to somebody about it or by journaling about it, whatever it is, it helps relieve that pressure. Okay. So I'd encourage you, if you want to like take a picture of this or whatever, screenshot, you will get the slides for this as well. And yeah, I would love to open it up with any questions or comments. I really love talking about these things. We have about 10 minutes before we need to jump off. So very open to questions, comments, discussions.
I have to jump off pretty quickly here, but I gotta tell you, I sent a message to Miss Michaels there. I wish I had understood it better because our Job Corps students absolutely needed to be here in numbers. I just didn't understand. Excellent presentation, and I hope you keep doing it. So have a good day, and I've got to get going. I'll wait for any responses and stay a little longer, but I'll have to leave soon. Excellent.
Thank you. And I do this presentation for students as well. I'm happy to come to any organization. We can schedule something. My contact information is on the screen. So please feel free to reach out.
I think we heard about you from the great Miss Laura Davis, who works at Sacramento Job Corps Center. So I will connect with Laura, and then one of us will follow up with you. She's awesome. That's how I found out about this. Thank you so much.
Gloria.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Mia, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. So I just have a comment. I really appreciated this session that we had because although it was for youth, we were doing the things that we want to do for the youth. So going through every step that we wanted to take with the youth. And so that just kind of reminded me of when you're like on a plane and then the plane is crashing, and it always advises you to put the mask on yourself first before you can handle or deal with the child. And you know this is what this session reminded me of, and showing that although we are putting ourselves into positions where we have to care for others, we have to care for ourselves as well to really make an impact.
A great analogy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're right.
Great analogy.
Any other thoughts or questions?
More of a comment as well.
Yeah.
I just want to say that, like, man, this training felt so short because I feel like this is definitely something that can be applicable to literally any age group and any person because we all experience things like this. And yeah, it just felt really short, even though it was a while because it's such a good topic.
Thank you. I'm super passionate about it also because like everyone can relate, right?
I have a question. Yeah. Can you tell me some of your let's see, I'm sorry, I can't see your name on here.
It's okay. Brinn, Miss Brinn, Miss Langdale. However you want to call me.
Miss Brinn, what type of like inner critics do you have? Because what are you a therapist? I'm sorry, I was driving at first.
Yeah. So I'm a therapist. I'm almost licensed, so I'm not yet licensed. I can't call myself a licensed therapist. I should be licensed.
Yes, you can.
My inner critic has been so strong. I'm grateful for this work because I have been able to reframe it over the years. But oh man, yes, not smart enough was a huge one. any sort of not good enough, not pretty enough, not skinny enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm too much to handle, right? That's a huge one for me, especially in romantic relationships.
Me too.
Yeah. So it has been a big work on myself, and I got into therapy. I got into being a therapist because of the therapy that I did myself to heal my own traumas. So the critic in me is very strong.
How do you when you deal with the part of this is real quick, when you deal with the part of being too much for whatever type of partner you want, how do you do that? Because I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday. We're going to do a podcast, and we're talking about men and women, and I was like, I'm gonna do this different. I'm gonna try to not, do this and not do that. He said, well, if you do that, then you're not being yourself. And why do you want someone that doesn't want you for you? So how do you work on that part of you and trying to like find a balance to where you can still be yourself, but yet get with someone that you want to be with? Maybe someone who can understand you. Like, how do you work on that part of you? The part that is outgoing, the part that is a little bit too much.
Right. And so I think part of that is doing my own work so I can show up on who I genuinely want to be. Because the part of me that has been seen as too much, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that either. I'm not a huge fan of my too much anxiety or my too much critic or my, whatever it is. So I needed to do the work on my own self to kind of help myself soothe those things. Like I was saying about self-soothing, it's like, how can I help myself so I can show up in a more authentic, genuine way that the person will be able to receive it. And they have done their work to be able to handle whatever emotions come up. Right?
Yeah, like being transparent and letting them know and communicating and things of that nature. Letting people know ahead of time who you are and to communicate.
Right, exactly.
Same thing with the students.
Yeah. Right. And being able to, there's a whole thing around right now around people not wanting to deal with things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's whether that's, we see that, even in the dating or ghosting people, having difficult conversations, like not wanting to see people cry. Like I hear a whole host of things from the youth that are like, oh no, we don't talk about that. Oh, I don't see my friends cry. I can know they're crying, but like, text me an emoji of like tears and I got you, but like, don't cry in front of me. So there's this whole culture being created of people feeling like they're too much. And this is a widespread, phenomenon that I'm seeing it's kind of increasing, but at the same time that that's increasing, there's also this other side that's increasing, which is people who are able to sit with it, able to sit in the uncomfortability, people who have done work on themselves, people who are interested in mental health and know that it's important to express our emotions in any way, shape, or form that it comes across. Not in a detrimental way, but how can we do it in a way where we're able to hold space for people and normalize holding space and normalize uncomfortable emotions and normalize, being able to express ourselves. And then, if it didn't come across the right way the first time, I'm going to go back and I'm going to maybe apologize for some things. And I'm going to maybe, do some repair work around maybe something that was a little extra or something, so
Thank you.
It's a really big topic that I think is really important.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Before we get to another question, I just wanted to mention the survey, Brinn. I put it in the chat twice. We would really love your feedback on, all of this, if you liked it, and if you have, further questions or comments, the survey is a perfect place to put that. I also will be sharing this recording and the slides and the survey as well, either today or tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, but you will get the materials. And I just want to say thanks for coming. And I'll put the survey in there one more time, and there's like 2 minutes, so all I have.
I'll say, Drusella, if you're still on here, I love that the essay that you posted, by the way. That's a really great one. Anyone else have any other thoughts or questions before we jump off? And if not, please feel free to reach out. I'm pretty passionate about anything related to these topics of mental health in general. More than happy to chat with you. If you want any more information about the other presentations that I do, check out my website. I love doing presentations for youth and for adults, and just getting access to information out there. That's something I'm really, really passionate about. So in any way, shape, or form, if I can help, I am happy to do so. And thank you so much for spending the last hour and a half with me. It really means a lot. And I love the ripple effect by you having some more information about your own self. That is absolutely going to ripple effect into your families, to your relationships, to your friends, and especially to the work that you do with the youth. And that is so important for these future generations. So thank you for the work that you do. Take care of yourselves, stay healthy mentally and physically, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Brinn.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.